Hi, I'm Sharon. So, as we start to look at the Women, Peace and Security agenda, I think a really important starting point is not only looking at the country reports or the regional intergovernmental reports, but have a look at the UN Secretary General's report on 1325, which was just tabled during the recent open debate on 1325, the 19th anniversary of UN Security Council 1325. I think it sets a very important tone for what we are doing as we take stock of the WPS agenda in the context of the Beijing Platform for Action. So obviously, we have been peace building. We have our foremothers, and we reaffirmed through the Beijing Platform for Action the vital historical role of women peace builders and women as powerful drivers of peace movements, of non-violence, of conflict prevention as well. There are some very key measures to take into account through the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, and also the affirmation that women need to be at the table. However, 19 years since the first adoption of UNSCR 1325, and as we look towards Beijing plus 25, we need to recognize that not everything has worked. We have to change the narrative to women need to redesign the table so that we're looking at the intersectionalities and the drivers of inequalities. So what was agreed in the Beijing Platform for Action are 6 areas, focusing on participation and protection, the reduction of military expenditures and arms control, the promotion of non-violent forms of conflict resolution and the reduction of human rights abuses, the promotion of women's contribution to fostering cultures of peace, ensuring there's protection for both internal and external displacement, and a very key issue for my part of the world, the Pacific, that we need to continue to provide assistance to women of the colonies and living in non-self-governing territories. We now have 10 Security Council resolutions. The most recent adoption on the 19th anniversary of 1325. But even with all of these suites of resolutions, are we really getting there? We're seeing rollback on the prevention of sexual gender-based violence and more broadly, sexual reproductive health and rights. We are, however, getting more specific references to the roles of regional intergovernmental organizations, and the UN Security Council Resolution 2242 in 2015 takes into account climate change as a security issue. CEDAW has a general recommendation on women in conflict prevention, which is critical, conflict and post-conflict situations, and we need to be looking in terms of the interlinkages. So I have to mention CEDAW General Recommendation 37, which has specific linkages to disasters. We also have the Sustainable Development Goals, and I think it's really important that the Women, Peace and Security agenda is anchoring all the sustainable development work while we're looking at the interlinkages with other processes like climate change and also Sendai framework in terms of disaster risk reduction. There's going to be some important work that can be done through this work that we're collaborating on in terms of the sustaining peace linkages. And I think it's important that when we're framing our priorities, we're looking at accountability, the sustaining peace agenda, so the role of women in peace building, in non-violence, the protection of women's human rights defenders and women's organizations, and financing the peace and security agenda. So we need to be asking for greater accountability at national, regional, and intergovernmental processes, as well as the United Nations. We need to be making sure that women are more effectively engaged in participation for the sustaining peace agenda to work and in conflict prevention. And we need to also be making sure that we're protecting women's rights, human rights defenders, and women's organizations in line with human rights treaties. We also finally need to be looking at the sustained resourcing issue, that we need to be supporting women in a way that we can be working collaboratively to drive our women-led peace programs, to be innovative, to be investing in our coalitions, to be increasing the availability of gender and women's rights expertise, and finally, that there's greater and more effective participation for women in all levels. So I'm going to wrap up here because I'm going to say, have a look at the PowerPoint as well, but let's keep the focus on prevention, enhancing participation, including by ensuring there's better protection and protection accountability in terms of the reduction of military spending, looking at relief and recovery from the impact of disasters and other humanitarian crises, and last but not the least, ensuring that the institutional arrangements are accountable back to us through the human rights treaties and other obligations. Thanks.